If more of you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
Blah, 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 blah.
Sending out good vibes.
Blah, blah, blah.
Good vibes.
Blah,
Good vibes.
blah, blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica Show. Coming at you this week with Dan the Dedunker. I mean, sorry, we've been working for a while to get there. I mean, Timmy and Ian, and I don't know if you were there, but a bunch of these guys met Dan at our last tour.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've been trying to, and then I think that was pre-Rogan, right?
It might have been post the first Rogan. It might have been, yeah. Yeah, it might have been post the first Rogan. I mean, he had definitely blown up already.
Had he blown up already?
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting. It's a good chat. We've been working on getting it going back and forth for a while. Finally got it together. So it's a good one. I mean, there's still a I was just talking to Dan the other day. There's still a non-zero chance that he'll be coming along on our trip here in a couple of weeks. So
To the Bonneville flood. The Bonneville
flood. Yeah, it's coming up quick. It's May 11th. So that's going to be about 6 weeks. 6 weeks from today or so. 6 weeks from this weekend, probably coming up. Might be less, but it's got to be 6. So we'll be going. It's Sunday to Saturday, all week long, from Salt Lake City all up through Idaho to Boise and back, with Randall Carlson and Brad and the gang and the drivers, Nicky the dude, the whole gang be there. It's going to be time. And it'll be a good one. It's going to be nice and warm. Spring weather there, so it won't be crazy hot. It should be beauty. I'm looking forward to it. And I'll be there. I don't think Graham's going to make this one, but I'll be there. Randall will be there. The wife's coming down. And of course, it's always the same drivers. So it's a whole crew. I mean, it's turning into a bit of a reunion. I got to say, it's always nice to go down and see those guys, hang out for a week. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. If you want to check that out, they go contact at thecabin.com. You know what I figured out is it's not on the contact at the cabin page. It's only in the menu. You go to the menu, you can find it, but it's not. And the web guy hasn't given it its own graphic down below. Which
but I mean, even if it had the graphic, it's just still going to take you to the.
But I just had a couple people say they can't find it on the page, and that's why. Because on the mobile, it's not super intuitive.
Oh Jesus! Okay, I'll try and get that.
Yeah, if you go there on your phone, because you have to click on those 3 bars to get it to display.
Oh yeah, the 3 bars always messes people up.
Yeah. So anyway. There is some spots left for that. Not a lot, but there's a few, and check that out. There might even be an Azores ticket available right now because someone did have to back out of that. So if they want to check that out, that's all there. Contact at thecabin.com. There's a way there you can sign up for the mailing list as well, and you can get on the emailer so we can tell you about new cool stuff we're doing. We're definitely already talking to the Randall Carlson team about some mound stuff. And if we do some mound stuff, I mean, we'll have to talk to PD Newman again, right? And see if we can meet up with him while we're out there. So we're talking about maybe doing that in 2026 and something else around the Scablands and Flat Lake, I think Brad was saying. We got a meeting coming up soon. Brad's moving, so everything's sort of disarray. But we do have the 2 things. And I mean, Graham and I are officially looking at an Easter Island thing. We found shout out to Cliff Dunning over at Earth Ancients, who just did one. He just did it. He does great trips over there at earthancients.com. Like, we don't have competitors. We just have buddies. I mean, it's funny. Like the Ben and the Bros are doing the same sort of thing. They're over in Egypt right now, are probably on their way home from Egypt. But yeah, that's coming up. Man, they must be staying over there because they have the turkey trip right away too.
Oh yeah. another month away, another month abroad. Yeah. Wow.
What an adventure. So anyway, we're looking at maybe doing an Easter Island thing too, in next year sometime, maybe in a year and a half. I don't know. You guys, we're sort of testing the waters to see. It looks like the one Cliff did was like 8 or 9 days, and it costs like $4,000 for a standard ticket ish, in that sort of ballpark. Plus your flights. So let us know if there's enough people to maybe spin that up, because we're looking at it, and I've been connected with someone that'll basically, take you around, take you to the places, take you here, take you there, and show you the stuff.
So it probably won't be with a Randall, but it'd be with Darren and I, and maybe another
local guides. There's
local guides, yeah. But it's not going to be like a celeb trip,
No, just us. We'll have local guides and presenters.
But let us know your interest, because if there's no interest at all, then maybe we'll hold off. But if there's a lot of interest, maybe we will.
If there's a lot of interest, we'll try and do it next year. I think we need at least 16 or 20 people to pull it off. So, and that'd sort of be the max. I think 20 would be the max. It's not a very big. We were just looking at the island on the map. It's fucking tiny, and it's a couple of long flights to get there. But it's been super overwhelming for the entire time we've been doing trips until this sort of connection came up, where it looks like we could get everything dealt with through, almost like when we went to Egypt, where we work with the Kemet school. It's that sort of same idea where we go there and they take care of everything, and we just sort of hire it out to them and deal with it that way. So if that's something there's interest for, GrammaticAmerica.com, let us know. Sign up for that mailer, and we'll let you know if we do it. Say it looks like the Cliff one was going for $4,000 to $5,000 range, and I'd probably be ballpark of the same sort of thing. If it's something, you can check out the earthagents.com website if you want to see what they did. It looks like they had quite a time. I think today or yesterday was the last day of his tour. I seen the group photo, and dude, the hotel or whatever gave him his own homemade wooden carved moai as a gift.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty. Imagine you have a moai from Easter Island.
Yeah.
Made by Rapa Nuian. So check that out, GrammaticAmerica.com, if that's something that you're into.
Also, speaking of Dan, the Dedunker and trips and stuff, I'm going to be with Dan on stage. Well, not on stage. It's more of like in a classroom on a debate panel about Atlantis at the Cosmic Summit.
What's so you going to argue?
What do you mean? I'm going to argue for Atlantis being real. There's too many. It'll be fun to be on there with Dan, and there's, I think, 5 of us. So it'll be fun. I think, a little nervous, of course, but I think I've read enough and done enough shows on it that I think I should be fine. But so that's another. So that's in Greensboro in June 20th to the 23rd. So, and actually we have a code here to get you 10% off. I think the basic ticket doesn't work. The code doesn't work, but for the other ones, the Moai Pass, the Megafauna Atlantean, and the Anunnaki passes, Grimerica 25 gets you 10% off. And I think we get a tiny kickback there.
And if we get enough kickbacks, I'll go as well.
Yeah, so we want to get Darren there, basically. So whoever's going, let's do this early. Like all the people that are thinking about going to the summit, use our code, get there, get your 10% off. We'll get Darren there, and then we'll have a party that weekend,
Yeah, because they gave me a free room and a press pass, so I just got to get the flight covered. It's nothing. We just need, like, if the 5 or 6 people or 10 of you can go buy tickets, and that'll cover my flight.
Yeah, it'll be like a mini contact
anywhere, right there. And you save money.
And we'll have lots of friends. There'll be lots of friends there. It'll be a blast. We got guys like, I think, Randall and Schockerback, Ben Van Kerkwick, Robert Edward Grant this time, Danny Hillman, I think, Dan Richards.
Ian and Nicky are both going. 2 of the drivers.
Yeah, I was talking about the guests. The speakers, but anyways. So, yeah.
It's it always sucks going over there.
Over where, back east?
Yeah, you might as well be going to Europe, really. It's a fucking bitch to get there.
I know. I don't think people understand getting from the west to east. I know.
Yeah, it sounds like why.
Because you also lose 2 hours going there. So you leave at 8 and you get in at like 4. It's like an 8-hour trip, even though it only took you 6 hours. But
That's right. And I think we're also talking about, we're going to give you guys an extra episode. We got a bunch of, we got too much content. So we're going to probably dump out an extra episode later this week for you guys. I don't know who that'll be, but they're starting to stack up. Otherwise, we're going to have like 8 in the can. So we're going to throw some extra value at you guys. You know, by the way, this is episode 700, you sons of bitches. So
Right. 700. Yeah. The big 700 club.
you're welcome. At $1 an episode, you know where you're at. Anyway, grimerica.ca/support. You guys, this is the start of some of this extra content we were talking about now that we've both committed to this. You know, it's podcast or die. So if you guys are into it and you're getting some value from the show, from the 700 episodes, I mean, if you guys haven't, there's tons of people that haven't gone back and listened to the early episodes. It's really worth going back and checking that stuff out. It really is. There's some gems back there. We came out of the gate swinging above our belts, above our weight class. So there's some good stuff back there. There's a great fortune cookie prank of episode 100. I think it starts in 139 and culminates in 141, somewhere in there, which is, I think Rick Simpson is one of those episodes, right? Rick Simpson from the Rick Simpson Oil.
Is that 141? Is that when that episode, when that prank culminated?
Yeah, I think we started. I think I ordered the cookies around 139, 138, 139. And
139 is Rick Simpson.
So I think that's when James sent in the synchro. I think still listens to the show. He still supports. He's been on that 333 for like a decade.
Thanks, James. James the handler.
James the handler. I still haven't ruled out that he's a spook of some sort. He just seems to travel the world, never work. But I mean, that's what we're trying to do too. So, I do. Speaking of value for value, I mean, it's a shitty week for that. It really is. We only got one new supporter.
141 was Grimerica Talks Witches and Psychedelic Ointments with Thomas Hatzis.
Yeah, that was when the mushroom juice was on the broom handle, right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Yeah, so we only got one new supporter this week. So it'd be nice if we could step that up a little bit, maybe get up to 3, 3 or 4. And so this is someone who's already supporting too, who has just signed up for an additional monthly, which we appreciate. And that's our buddy who we're lucky enough to meet in BC last year, Brad Mahal, comes in with another $14 a month. So thank you, Brad.
Thanks, Brad.
We really appreciate it. He sent a note. Which platform was it on? I thought it was, maybe it was on Facebook, actually. Here it is. So I just caught up on the podcast. Congratulations on full-time podcasting. I added 14 more bucks a month to my donation. You guys were dead on speaking the other day about taking the leap. You can't have one foot still in the system. I took the leap from underground mining just over 1.5 years ago. It was great money and very hard to do, as all I had known for 20 years. Best decision I ever made. We have a 64-acre homestead on the island now. We will be totally self-reliant in the next year, and we just bought our backup in plan in Costa Rica, 3 acres in case Canada goes sideways any more than it already is. Grimerica, a couple other podcasters, and Synchronicity got me into the right books and ultimately a way of life. The way of life has set me free. Thanks for all you guys do. Keep up the good work. Oh yeah, if you're sick of bugs when you're enjoying the outdoors, come for a visit to the island. No bugs, ever. It's awesome. Good fishing, good hunting. It's not all hippies and lefty liberals either. That's Victoria and Vancouver. The rest of BC are country people, good, hardworking, honest redneck. All the best, brother. You got this. I believe in you. So
Nice.
yeah, thanks, Brad.
That's
We
great.
appreciate it. We appreciate the support. If you guys want to, be like Brad and be a noble like Brad, and maybe even become a lord, one of the lords or ladies of Grimerica, head over to grimerica.ca/support today. Sign up for a monthly or make a one-time donation. Like I said, we're going to start coming up with an extra couple episodes a month for you guys. So this is meet us halfway. Let's try and do fucking 3 years next week instead of just 2. I think one this week. I think we could get up to 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we should be able to do 10 a week. This is nothing.
We just want to really like grow a little bit, and we don't want to become rich. Just
Just try
beat
to-
attrition, just to try and beat attrition. That's it. Just stay ahead of attrition.
Inflation is like 2% a month. So
We're in Canada.
we need like 2 a week just to fucking keep up with the taxes. So anyway, we'd appreciate it. Gramerica.ca/support. Sign up today. Check out Adult Brain too. We got a couple new books come out. A bunch of them. We're almost back up to 150 on Audible and Spotify, and we have them on our own podcast. And you can buy them directly from us, or you can get them on YouTube for free if you're broke. There's a bunch of different ways to get it. So,
hey, people can check out YouTube if they want to see me how the books are made. I'm doing like live reads of Ragnarok, the Age of Fire and Gravel. It's kind of a visual book. There's some pictures in it. There's not a ton of them, but yeah, I'm just reading that every morning at 9, basically. So check it out.
Yeah, boy, I got this knot tied in this thing. But speaking of lords, I do got to give a shout out to Lord Steve Lynch, because I broke the knife he had made me. It fell on my concrete floor of my garage and broke. So he sent me a brand new one, another homemade custom piece.
Wow, that looks
nice copper handle. Yeah, I mean, there's some pictures of it on my Instagram, my Facebook, if people want to see it. Well, probably Instagram is the best because I've started to get pickier about who I'll accept on Facebook because it's just getting all body like Twitter. So it's almost like I've had like 3 versions of the same person trying to add me, and it's like the dude I went to high school with. I'm like, we've been friends for fucking the entire time I've been on Facebook. It's just like he's still posting on his other account, and there's like that's why when your mom added me, I had to make sure it was her.
No, Maria just came to me with some scam that's like trying to get her. That she finally replied to somebody's post because she doesn't really engage in it, and then all of a sudden people start replying to her with these scams. Right? I mean, it's just gross. How can they let these platforms get out of control like that? Oh, that's a throwing spike. Eh?
Dude, this is a big one. This is like 20. This is probably a 30 mil.
Yeah,
by a foot long.
I like it. That's a throwing spike.
Yeah, and then I got, dude, this is heavy. This is gonna be 3 pounds, 2 pounds.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can fuck you up with it just by like I could throw.
Yeah, but it's a throwing. What's it technically called?
A throwing spike.
A throwing spike. Yeah. So
throwing stars are illegal in Canada, but it turns out that spikes are not because they had it ripped apart and then taped up with the CBSA as opened your package tape.
Wow. What?
So, but they were still in there.
You should have just said this is a machete on it, and it would be allowed.
It was fine. I got the knife with the cool homemade sheath. Custom.
Well, what's the other one that's allowed?
All my knives now I run are from him. I got my skinning knife is from him, and my good bigger skinning knife and like breaking down knife. He made me a sweet cleaver and a machete and the tomahawk that's behind me on the video show. So, and then he made me 2 smaller ones of these too that I keep in the cup beside my bed.
Is that the person that made the axe staff for me then?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I love that axe staff. Yeah, I did it all. I did it all. I wood burned it and put some rope on the handle and stuff. Yeah, it's cool.
I mean, it's not like I really need the throwing spikes beside my bed.
No, but dude, those are good to have, I think.
Oh yeah, I got 38 in the fingerprint safe though, like right underneath them. Probably most likely to go to that if I hear the door get kicked in. I mean, I jump out of bed all excited, run down the hall and put a couple hollow points in them. Be like Christmas. Anyway, then I have to go to court and all that. I mean, best to avoid all that. Really is. Anyway, I sprung here. I was out shooting. I shot some gopher yesterday. Went for a long walk down the lake's open down south. Still frozen here, but it's open down south, down at Travers.
Where'd you get the gopher?
Travers.
What'd you do with
I
it?
could just go over on what did I do with it.
Yeah.
I left it for the fucking coyotes. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, just hunting for fun, just killing things for fun.
You got to kill the gophers, man. They
Right?
really
Who's going to play on the course?
the what? Oh, this
Who's
is
going to play on the course?
what course?
Well, if I kill all the golfers, who's going to play on the course?
Oh, is this some weird Rodney
It's
Dangerfield?
Caddyshack. Yeah, it's a Caddyshack.
Nobody
Right?
gets it.
Nobody knows.
Said this is fucking okay, boomer. The Gophers destroy the field. They really do. They just like fucking wreck the place. Then you can't really bring the horses out there because it's all full of fucking gopher holes everywhere.
Yeah, it's Bill Murray. Bill Murray goes on a total quest to try and kill all the golfers.
I get it. I get it now. You see, you get it. I mean,
We had little like.
you know, like the
Do you
farmers.
remember watching that? Do you remember seeing it with the
I can't watch-
plasterine? He had the little plasterine like animals and stuff, and
That was Caddyshack, right?
yeah,
Was it Caddyshack? Way
Bill
back.
Murray and Caddyshack.
And Rodney Dangerfield.
Well, he was in it, but Bill Murray played the biggest and best role. Him and Chevy Chase. I mean, it really is a cast of characters.
We started watching what's it called the other day, but didn't get through it. The Holy Grail.
Oh, you didn't get through it?
No,
I'm glad you tried it again, though.
really want
Were you getting a kick out of it, or
that's all right. The other one's better, I think. Probably Life. of Brian.
no, dude? That's the best of all time. I mean, that's my favorite, probably my favorite movie ever. I mean, maybe it resonates me with more because I'm from there, but you know,
I'm finally almost caught up on the Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
But what did you like? How far did you get to the Grail? I mean, I got to ask you more about this.
Probably like halfway. I don't know. Just fell asleep. Maybe we finished it. I don't know. Or maybe we, got into some hanky panky. I don't
Was
remember.
Shonda liking it at all?
Shauna likes it all. Yeah, she's into it.
You didn't find it funny? Like
I didn't say it wasn't funny. It's just like it gets us. Just,
how smart it was, or how
some of it's pretty smart. Other of it is fucking ridiculous. And you just couldn't get away with enough back then. You know what I mean? Like the slippery slope into debauchery has come so far that I expect more crazy stuff. I mean, I did go to the movies. I went to the local theater. It was very small. There's probably us and like 10 other people in the theater. So we were on the little balcony. We had the whole place to ourselves. We got a hand job. I didn't, but I could have. I watched Mickey 17.
what's that about?
Some dude who signs up to go to space is an expendable, which means because they figured out how to print people, reprint you. So you could download your memories onto a cube and then die and then get reprinted and come back to life. But they made it illegal on Earth. So the dude who's running the spaceship, the weird culty spaceship, the people on it that are in his like little cult, because he loses the election and then he wants to take the ship off to outer space to cultivate another planet. And they all have red hats. And then Buddy kind of talks like Trump.
Wow,
That's creepy. Yeah, there's definitely some Trump stuff there. Just some political stuff sprinkled in, some woke shit. But that was about it, and it was pretty minimal. It wasn't overbearing, but it was still weird. I mean, but dude dies like 16 times and just comes back to life.
Did you like it?
Eh.
You made it through the whole thing.
I made it through the whole thing. It wasn't great, but it wasn't like atrocious. It would have been very easy to walk out too. I was already like, oh yeah, we could just, if this is bad, we could easily just get up and leave because you never know what you're getting these days. But it was, I guess, a pleasant surprise. That being said, is not great. It was cheap. It was only $10 to go see it though, so it was fine. It was like I'll never watch it again, or I'm not recommending anyone to watch it.
Yeah,
but I didn't leave during it. So what's that, like 2 stars? 2 or 3. Yeah, so there you have that. The movie report. I went to the movies, so that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you're really breaking out of it there after you left your job.
Yeah, well, grimerica.ca/support. And let's keep them. I can go to the movies again, maybe another day. Thanks, Brad, for the movie tickets. Anyway, what else you got? Is that it? We out of here? We did go long with Dan.
That's about it, I think. Yeah.
All right. Well, check our other stuff out. We got grimericaoutlaw.ca if you guys want to check that out. We got some other stuff over there. We got the roundups and the Canadian content over at the alist.ca, eh-list.ca. And then all the other stuff will be at the end of the episode. All the links. You got a bio for Dan? Is that a thing?
Yeah, I do. I had his bio from his YouTube channel, which is where did I lost it here? Let me get back to it here. At Dedunking is his YouTube channel, and it is making videos about alternate history from a perspective of a skeptic, debunking erroneous claims against alternate history. No aliens, no sonic pyramid power plants, no global communication crap, no woo. What is global communication crap? Instead, I use science, logic, and speculation based on the evidence at hand. So there you go. Check it out. Check them out. And yeah, I'll see you at Cosmic Summit.
Cosmic Summit, baby. All right, guys. Enjoy the chat with Dan Richards.
Dan the Dedunker, welcome to Grimerica. How you doing?
Oh, doing great, Graham. Darren, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, good to see you again. Yeah, we met briefly before the Scablands, or was it the? I think it was the one we went through Montana.
Yes, I was here in Spokane or in Airway
right.
Heights. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, I think it was our Montana. Or no, not Montana. It was the Scablands leg 3, I think, where we went down through the gorge and all that. I think it was recently.
Right when you came to Spokane, I think a mutual friend of ours, Tim, reached out to me.
Right.
He was like, hey, and that's where I had to make sure with Randall that I wasn't going to be like, coming in and gate crashing his or party crashing his thing, right? It's like, I didn't pay for this tour, so
yeah.
But it worked out fun. That was nice.
Yeah, exactly. And then we were going to book you on here, and then of course you got invited back to Jerry, so we lost you for a while, and now you're back settling in after the bump.
Well, yeah, that's definitely changes how life goes. There's no question.
Well, you're pretty conflictory too on on the social media, so. When you're, I'm sure that you had to deal with some damage after that. When you're calling people out, and you don't really pull any punches on what you think. So,
yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I'll try to be tactful about things, but if it gets to a point where I don't feel like tact is going to be effective or a useful tool at all, I will just call it like it is. And even then, even when I'm trying to be tactful, I'm not. I'll sugarcoat it, but I'm not going to deny what's there. If it's, we got a problem, like probably a big example of that in this community is the skulls down in South America and Peru. There's a lot of claims of DNA work and stuff done. And it's like, well, I need receipts, buddy. I don't, tell me all the stories you want, but if the data's in Canada, you don't know her, man. That doesn't fly with me. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you're in that position where you piss off both sides. You piss off the believers, you piss off the skeptics, but I feel like we'll resonate with much of what you have to say, because it seems like, I watch a bunch of stuff to prep for the show, and it seems very reasonable. I don't know. It just seems like, you're kind of down the middle, and you're accepting kind of a little bit of both sides, whenever you think that it's, it's required to be skeptical about something or reasonable about something else. A good example is the vases, right? Like I watched your round of the vase, and that's kind of what we think. We're not going like all in. I think I would probably go a little further as far as like the ancient high technology type stuff. But I'm not stuck on all that, but so I mean, there's not really a question in there, but
No,
maybe what's your thought about that?
well, no, that's it's a little piece right there. Yeah, no, I think that's actually probably the best way forward with this stuff. I'm actually kind of surprised that as many people uh, like my content as they do, because we do live in very polarized times. So it kind of blows my mind when things first started taking off. I was just like, well, this is kind of weird. I expected to just be getting yelled at by both sides all the time, and instead it's slowly. But that I mean, it's boring. It's a boring take. Let's be honest. If you sit down and you want me to tell you the story about the vases, it's a whole lot nicer if I can start with the story arc of them finding the things in Saqqara and then end with the story arc of there's a question mark, but you know what the question is, buddy. We all know what we're getting at here, and that makes for better content. But it's not. The honesty thing that with the vast majority of these things, we just need more work done. That's really what it comes down to. And that's a boring answer. That really is just like, well, we need to send somebody else to check out the face on Mars or the underwater things in Cuba, or more measurements and work done on these, just so many things like this. And that's always boring, but I guess not. I mean, people tend to like my content. Some it's more than I expected. So
That's good. Yeah, that's a good problem to have.
Before we go too far, can you sort of just take us through, for the people that aren't familiar with you, for the people that don't listen to Rogan, what dedunking is, sort of what you do and how you sort of got where you're going. And I mean, it all sort of happened fast.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. Yeah, I watched Ancient Apocalypse season 1, and I watched a lot of Graham Hancock or read a lot of Graham Hancock, for years. And I got custody of my son in 2015. Put all hands on deck with him, and then he got to 14, 15 years old. Dad can, get pissed. Go away, Dad. I got things to do. So I watched Ancient Apocalypse, and then I'm like, well, I wonder what the debunkers on YouTube are doing. And I saw Stefan Milo and Mini Minuteman's videos, and I was like, you guys don't know what Hancock's positions are. You're just like straw manning him and railing at him. And I was like, okay, so I made a video, and it did all right. And it just kept going. But that was where the debunking came from, because Milo Rossi from Mini Minuteman, one of his short videos, he was like, get dunked on, Graham Hancock. And that's what we're going to undunk some of these things. So and that was my original intention. And then as I started moving forward, in order to maintain my position, in order to show people where I'm at, I started looking at both sides and calling out things that were like, oh, come on, you're not getting piezoelectricity from these big limestone blocks like people are trying to say, and things like that. There's certain things that I would take shots at, and it just slowly became, I just call them like I see them. Here we are.
But did you have an interest way before that, though? I mean, it seems like you've been interested in this stuff for a long time. And from a more skeptical point of view then, or?
Yeah, I've been, I pre-ordered Fingerprints of the Gods. I had it at 95. I got it at Hastings. They had an email, or I think it was a call back then. Can't remember, but I remember being like, it's time to go get it. Because I'd read the sign and the seal. And I was less skeptical back then than I am now. I mean, I'm sure you guys remember the 90s were a pretty hippie time. But there's, probably about 5 years of it, I got not real skeptical, but I was like, there's some things that I would see that I didn't completely agree with, but but then in 2015, when I got custody of my son, and even the few years leading up to that, I didn't have as much time, so I didn't dig into it and stuff. The last one of Graham's books that I'd read at that point was Underworld. And then I just kind of had to fall off and do my own thing. And then when I came back, it's like, as soon as I had a chance, I was like, basically the first thing I did was check out what Graham was up to, and saw Ancient Apocalypse. I mean, I was honestly, it's crazy. A lot of people are like, what was it like meeting Joe? And Joe's great, but I mean, I've been a fan of Graham for so long that, like, if you were to say, who would you want to sit down with and talk, it would be like, David Gilmour or Graham Hancock. Those would be my two choices. So I was pretty happy when I got to meet him.
Another Pink Floyd reference. Oh my God. I mean, I cannot believe how many, I was a huge Floyd fan in the 80s. And I can't believe how many people in my 50s I meet that love Pink Floyd too. That's super weird. I mean, because I was kind of one of the unusual ones back then. And now, like, everybody I meet, like, Pink Floyd stood the test of time, and Hancock too. Yeah, that's super interesting. I mean, part of me, when I hear you talk like that, and when I'm listening to a couple of your shows, I was thinking about I feel like part of the problem and why people get so believy is because of the way things are kind of like just hidden and not talked about, not acknowledged. There's not a lot of open debate about this stuff. So, I mean, my conspiratorial mind goes to like, well, they don't want us to know about, Atlantis and all these ancient Cyclopean structures or whatever. They just seem to not be, even the archaeologists, they don't even seem to address things really. And you've done a lot of the good deconstruction on their arguments against you. And yeah, I just feel like that perpetuates the conspiracies and the believers. I mean, I don't know, maybe that's what they want.
That's I don't think it's exactly what they want. But it definitely perpetuates the conspiracy side of things. I said this back when I first had a falling out with a bunch of the archaeologists because it was the racism thing that I really like. I was buddies with Flint and stuff on Twitter. We were all getting along just fine. I mean, we would disagree, but it was cordial. And but it was the racism thing when I started just hammering at it. And I'm like, look, you guys, the stuff that you're putting out there is factually incorrect. It's not just like idealistically, politically wrong. It's factually bullshit. And you're putting it out there as fact, and you're academics there. And at one point I said, you are making it to where I can factually say archaeologists are lying about Atlantis. You realize that, right? And so it's that same kind of thing where it's like, there's nothing to see here with the underwater pyramids or whatever off of Cuba. There's no reason to go back to the face on Mars even, which is, in my opinion, a little bit out there, but if you say there's no reason to check it out, there's no reason to look at those underneath the trees that go back like Tuppy. We've excavated 5%. That's good enough. All of these things reek. Even if it's like standard operating procedure is to only excavate 5%. There's two ways you can handle that: is to use that as an educational opportunity and explain to the public that this is how we do things, or you can go out there, go look at these fucking idiots. They're all blah blah blah, and yell, and then you end up with what we have here, where it's a lot of conspiracy. And if there is a conspiracy, they've definitely got a big fat smokescreen to hide it behind. Personally, I'm not of the opinion that they're hiding things as much, but if there's definitely a how do you put it? They just don't give a shit. What the most passionate people about archaeology in the world are into alternate history and Atlantis and pyramids and ancient aliens and all that. Woo. And they turn up their nose at their biggest market, and then they cry when their departments get shut down, and then they wonder why everybody thinks they're untrustworthy. It's just like, you got a PR of fucking bronies, man. You guys are terrible at this. Terrible.
Do you think they mean what they say about all this racism stuff? Again, I read Donnelly's book cover to cover because I narrated it, and yeah, there's a lot of fodder in there for non-contextual stuff just because the word Aryan is in there. But I mean, they must know back then that that talking about the red, black, yellow, white races wasn't necessarily racist. I mean, it was just that was the ancients thought about how these different peoples came among the earth. I mean, maybe some of it was, but do you think they believe that, or are they just?
Well, I think what it is it's I think some of them believe it, but I think that the guys that first conjured these things up that are more, it's a really good tool. All right. I mean, if you go look up Graham Hancock on Google and the third hit down says white supremacy, the odds of you clicking on that first or second one have just gone way down. And so it works, right? It also, especially like I was saying earlier, we're living really polarized times. It's a great dog whistle to get all your boys to come and yell at this person, even if they don't think that he's racist. There's plenty of people out there that are perfectly willing to jump on the bandwagon as long as the right people are waving the flags to say, come yell, they'll go yell. So there's that side of it. But I honestly think that, well, I know that's where when I really first got pissed at the archaeologists is when I told Flint, and he point blank on Twitter just said that it didn't matter, when I was like, Donnelly's not the guy that started this stuff. You guys say in your letter to Netflix that to trying to get Graham's Ancient Apocalypse rebranded as fiction, you guys said that Ignatius Donnelly was the guy that began this crap, and it's not. It's cleverly worded. This theory dates back to Ignatius Donnelly, but that if it's a very tricky way of making it sound like this is created by a racist to do racist stuff, as opposed to hijacked by a guy that had some spicy ideas by modern standards. And they never want to mention the things about Donnelly that actually are important, like he was an abolitionist and he was a feminist by those standards, and he was left wing as fuck for his time, right? But they don't want to hold that. They ain't gonna. So anyway, it's kind of just a gross little. The useful idiots thing. They've got a lot of useful idiots that buy into it, but I don't think the people at the top buy that shit for 1 minute. I think they are perfect. John Hoops and Flint Dibble know that the racism has nothing to do with this. That none of us are looking at it going, man, if those pyramids were just in Europe, we'd know how they did it because white guys, right? Nobody's thinking that. They know that, but they don't care.
So how does that, like, how do you think? Because I mean, Flint especially, because I mean, I'll be honest, I listened to Flint and Graham on Rogan, and I came away with it. The first one, I'm like, man, this little dude's adorable. Like him and Graham should have a show together. They could like go around and like, you know, debunk each other. And I was like, I could watch these guys on TV. He seems like a nice enough guy. And then, I mean, man, it happened fast. Like 3 months later, like I'm like, I can't believe I was defending this piece of shit. Like I really can't. Like the stuff that started coming out of his mouth was really started to be pretty apprehensible. Do you think it was just too much for him? Do you think the Rogan exposure and the pushback from all that was just too much, or do you think it's bigger than that?
I think that too much is probably a really accurate way of putting it. If you watch his live streams in the few months following, he gets really angry at certain times, especially talking about me, but he'll get really, really angry. Red in the face and screaming at the camera and stuff. And like, you know, it's normal for people to get worked up about stuff. We start talking about certain stuff. You might see me get animated and but I'm not going to start screaming at it. He's a little bit, like most scientists, I've said this a few times, most scientists that are good at their job, which when it comes to seeds and shit, Flint is good at his job. They tend to be a little socially awkward, often a lot socially awkward. And you could see it, you know, he carries himself with that air. So that kind of thing where, especially when it's like you lied, it's not you made a mistake. It's like you deliberately played shell games with this shit. You deliberately tried to obfuscate the truth. You tried to win a debate at all costs instead of educating the public and having an honest discussion. That seemed to really press his buttons. That more than anything else seems to have set him off, and that's the spiral since then has been he's off the rails.
I've never been on Rogan, but I mean, you do just build up a certain skin to be getting called every name in the. I mean, Graham and I have got called every name in the book. We've been doing this for 12 years, and you're just bound to piss off people every step in the way. But I mean, just coming out of archaeology and being, because I never heard of Flint Dibble, and then all of a sudden you've got sort of the weight of the world on your shoulders. He didn't handle it well. He didn't seem to handle it well, and he did seem to know his stuff on the seed thing. And now that just has left me wondering, because then I hear some stuff here and there, and I actually wouldn't mind your take on this, but I hear some stuff here and there about how, well, he was wrong about the seeds because of this, and he was wrong about the seeds because of that. And I don't know what to believe anymore, you know, because Flint has left him in my mind as just being untrustworthy to a certain extent. So now I'm stuck with, you know, a guy that might be one of the preeminent seed experts on the planet, and I can't trust him because he's a liar.
Yeah, that's a huge problem with this whole thing. It's unfortunate because it damages the credibility of science, and science's credibility has been getting just a shit kicked out of it for the last 5 years, right? I mean, ever since the whole COVID thing, it's just gotten bad with the whole. It's almost like they have expected the public to not understand scientific method. And it's like we live in a time when there's probably 30% of the population that's well versed enough in science to understand that when you say something like trust the science, you're not even talking science anymore, dude. That's like saying God did it. This isn't science anymore. You're just saying something. So, that's been a bad thing. But now with these personalities coming out, you know, back in the day, for better or for worse, when you had the big media houses filtered what we saw, and G.I. Joe had to have a little thing at the end to make sure that, you know, it was educational for the public and the kids, you know, knowing's half the battle type of crap. And there was a little bit more social responsibility and stuff because the FCC had their hands controlling what we saw and what we heard. In those days, the scientists that got on TV were either so good at their job that they were talking to 5% of the population because nobody else could watch it and it was on PBS, or you were watching Carl Sagan and he knew how to talk to you. He was good at communicating science. And now it's not that way anymore. Now we've got any of them can do it, what all of us do, right? They can TikTok it or walk around in their backyard, point a phone at it and live stream it or post it. And so we get this. We get this. We get a lot of these guys that are really untrustworthy, that are really idealistically motivated. I talked to the guy, the ice core specialist, when I did the video on the metallurgy stuff, and he spent an hour on a Zoom chat with me privately, and I asked him all kinds of questions to make sure that I had my ducks in a row. And then I present that video, and Flint reaches out to him, and 5 minutes later, he's like, "Oh, well, it's not exactly." And he's not. All he did was muddy the water. He didn't say anything specifically. He didn't, because he'd already told me specifically what I said. It's just that he flat out said to Flint, and Flint's even on record saying it, that he didn't like the fact that I called Flint a liar. He says, that's not how scientists conduct themselves. And, well, yeah, you're right. I'm not a fucking scientist, buddy. I'm part of the public that you called racist. So fuck you. No offense, but I'll call you a liar when you lie. Sorry. Not sure if your audience can handle the F-bomb so much. Sorry, I'll try not to.
Oh no, Darren's got an F-bomb problem. It's
all right. Okay. Good deal.
No concern at all.
No. I tend to cuss it out tomorrow. So where is that? Like, because I think the main argument against the seeds was that I heard was basically that all that stuff Flint was talking about could have basically been erased just by a few bad grow seasons in a row.
Not exactly a few bad grow seasons, but the number one way that they track if a plant has been domesticated is plants have a thing called seed shattering. Your mind would basically think of it better as seed scattering. What it is in nature, if a plant, as soon as the seeds are ripe, they fall and start to grow, because otherwise they're just sitting there ripe, ready lunch for the first thing that passes by. So evolution has them dropping those seeds the second they're ready to go. We don't want that. We want them to stay on there until we thresh them, so we can put all the seeds in one big pile. So the first thing that you'll see is that the seeds don't fall off as easily as they did before. The seeds stay on the plant a little better when humans start domesticating them. The seeds get a little bit bigger and they stay on the plant a little longer. So with wheat, there's only one gene pathway that we know of to seed shattering, and they can say, this popped up about here in the record. But with rice, it's a whole lot more hairy, and it does look. There's multiple pathways for rice. There's certain strains of rice that definitely have shattered this way, regressed, and then shattered this other way now, which looks like it was domesticated, reverted to the wild, and then domesticated again, potentially. I mean, I'm not a geneticist, so that could well be, they could look at it and go, that's not necessarily true. But when I looked at the numbers, and I mean, their margin of error is pretty heavy on these things. They don't, they can't track it within a few hundred years. They're talking thousands when they go back that far. But there might not have been any domesticated crops back there, and Flint's position may have been accurate, but the way he portrayed it as an airtight case was bullshit. There is plenty of open room for there to have been domesticated crops in the ancient past. It's just, we would have to, just like the metallurgy thing, or just like the assumption that the Cuban underwater sunken city isn't real, you'd have to entertain the possibility realistically and skeptically, but fairly. Don't just be cynical and say there's no way this could possibly be because X. Actually give it a fair shake and see what you get.
Well, X is usually because it goes against the paradigm. So that's the problem. X is not, it doesn't stand up.
Yeah. The paradigm is generally speaking built on scientific ideas and scientific knowledge, but when it becomes like, I mean, you can. It's easy to point out the things that we got wrong in the past, but like the four humors model of medicine, where they were like, you need to drain some of this, and you need to add some of we get some of the bile out of you, and you need to take some more blood, and all this just goofy shit that had nothing to do with reality. But that was an uphill battle fighting that when you came out with stuff like real medicine, and That's the way, it's always that way. So it is, and the science always does. People always will try to hold what they know. I don't know if you guys know Planck's principle, Max Planck. He was a physicist in the 50s, a Nobel Prize winning physicist. And he's got a quote that basically summarized saying that science doesn't progress one discovery at a time. It progresses one funeral at a time.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, that's a savage one right there when you think about it. That's savage.
Seems like that's the way with most things.
It is the way with most things. I mean, look at it socially is probably the easiest way to see that, because you always got to look at the kids, and all of us are boomers, right? I mean, we all listen to Nirvana in our teenage years or whatever, but we're all boomers. So as far as they're concerned, because it's a social thing. It's an ideological thing. It has really nothing to do with the age and the generation. It's the idea.
Yeah. Do you want to continue on that vein, Darren?
No, I'm good on that.
So let's talk about, I've got a couple questions. Like, one is what's it like? What do you think one of the biggest mysteries is that needs sort of some microscopic, analysis kind of thing, some more attention, but also, and maybe this kind of would lead into it, but you went to Egypt, I think, recently. I know you kind of
I didn't get to, no.
Oh, you didn't go?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
No. Sadly.
Okay, sorry. I thought
you're right. I wanted to.
Okay. Because I was gonna ask you about Osirian, because you were talking about Osirian on one of your videos. So I thought you maybe had a walk around there. But so, I mean, is there stuff in Egypt? Does that fall into the category of like what needs the most attention? What's sort of like some of the big stuff that like you would want to see, like you're unsure about? You're kind of in the middle between like what the archaeologists would say and what the sort of more of like the conspiracy theorists would say.
Well, I think Easter Island is probably one of the best places for. I do believe in lost, like there's a lost civilization that is. They got recorded as Atlantis in Plato's case, and recorded as in a number of different ideas around the world. And I don't think they were like super technologically advanced, but I think that they had the ability to sail, and they were really good with stars because of that. And they were also good with teamwork and ropes and moving things. And so all those skills applied to building megaliths that aligned with stars and stuff when they hit the ground. And their superior astronomical knowledge. I mean, that history's shown us that, when the two cultures meet, the one with superior astronomical knowledge traditionally has ended up being the one that was more honored and more valued. I mean, there's a guy, I forget his name, but it was a Jesuit priest that was he went to China back in I think like the 1500s and they were the emperors, like his ability to rule was directly related on their ability to predict eclipses. And this guy he brought European astronomy, and he could predict eclipses better. And although he was never allowed to meet the emperor, and he was never allowed within certain areas, just all the same, xenophobic crap that they had going on back then, but he was buried in a Buddhist temple. He was the first foreigner to ever have that, like his own Buddhist shrine built for him. The emperor considered him his favorite foreigner, and it was all because his astronomical knowledge. So anyway, to circle back what you asked, I think places like Easter Island are one of the best places for us to look because of how small it is and how far back the possibilities go. The erosion, or excuse me, the erosion of the earth that's covering a lot of those statues looks like it's a lot longer than just a few hundred years. So if they dig around on there, I think that I think we could find a lot more stuff. Egypt for sure, but Egypt hasn't just been looted by the locals. It's been so heavily looted by rich people for the last 300 years that finding the really good stuff would be like, if there's anything really cool to find there, it's probably in a private collection already, sadly. But I think that like there are signs of connections around the world. There are signs of like stuff jumping across the pond is when I really am like, I take notice when you see the same iconography or the same skills being applied in a very similar way in the new world and the old. And I think that's honestly one of our biggest mysteries when it comes to that. And that's another reason why I think Easter Island's a big deal, because it is as far as we know, it's the oldest known bridge. Like it's like 1100 years ago or something like that. They find both New World and Old World foods on Easter Island, like in the oldest habited layer that they know of. Oh, there we go.
Yeah. No,
And
I
there
wanted
seems to be, well, wait, on that thread that, I mean, you must have noticed that there seems to be a bit of, I mean, that Easter Island relief carving is kind of eerily similar to some of the pillars at Göbekli Tepe.
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. The navel belly statues, the statues that are holding their stomachs. You see these all around the world. And God, I can never remember his last name. Graham. I'm sorry, Graham. It's not Hancock. But he wrote a book about it, and it's a really, really solid book. It's got he's got like I want to say like 100 and some odd in there of these all around the world, and they tend to show up in the culture at the same time as like early metallurgy when they start smelting copper and gold and things like that. These statues that are holding their stomachs like that tend to show up in the record. And again, that's the kind of thing that's like, it just seems to show up, or the master of beasts, the woman with an animal on each side of her, and she's usually holding them by the throat or something like that, just sitting on top, holding their hands on their head, something like that. That iconography shows up on both sides of the pond a lot. And like, well, or the Orion as the hunter in the sky. You see these things in other places. So, I mean, you see that in Göbekli or a car on Tepe. Not for certain, but there is a image of a guy with a club and like his hands out. He's got a club up like that, and the bull is coming towards him, and that looks like Taurus and Orion. So there's, I mean, you can some of those things. I use the bow and arrow a lot as an example of this. Some of these things, they go back so far, and they require so many little minute things that it almost beggars belief to think they were invented in different places. It almost they just had to have been shared.
Yeah. And I mean, there is that phenomena about inventions happening concurrently all over, without physical contact. So, I mean, maybe that is a thing. I mean,
yeah.
I was looking for a picture of the Easter Island because this kind of fits in with what I was going to ask you about sort of Egypt and sort of. So this is a picture of this moai that's like half excavated, right? There's like
Graham Langdon.
Thank you. Yes, there he is.
Yeah. It looks like there's like they've sort of excavated this moai kind of half. And our friends, I think you've met the Brothers of the Serpent, Russ and Kyle.
I haven't.
But they did a presentation called, I guess it's about they dropped their tools. Like, did they drop their tools? Well, it's called Unfinished. So, it kind of has to do with what I was going to share my screen and show you this picture. Like, this is the small pyramid in Egypt, right? And one of the things I feel like is the most mysterious and sort of unacknowledged things from the mainstream is like this carving of this flattening of this granite here. These are actually the casing stones on the bottom of the pyramid. And so you've probably seen that, and how high, like they take like 12 inches in some spots often, and they leave it flat. Like here's a good shot here, right? Of, that's, and then it also happened in the Osirian, right? They scraped the Osirian and the moai on Easter Island, the big obelisk in Aswan. There's all these spots where they were doing this kind of stonework. And let me just stop sharing that. They were doing the stonework and it stopped, they didn't finish the job. But the stonework like that, to me, that's just not from some sort of mechanical type, some rough mechanical tooling, that's there's gotta be something else there. So what do you think about that? I mean, and I was going to ask you about Elephantine Island because there's these granite boxes just strewn about Elephantine Island, and they're pretty much precisely made, and it's just like, and there's no explanation. There's not even a mainstream acknowledgement or explanation. Like, how are these things just strewn about and made out of all these different granite types strewn about the island, but also have temples built around them, like as a sepulcher type thing, I believe. Like, even I think the Isis temple was built around them. So, they were revered by someone way back when.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I'm not real familiar with Elephantine Island, to be honest with you, so I don't want to comment too heavily on it. I'll have to look into that because that's interesting. I love that kind of stuff. But those like the Menkares pyramid or the Easter Island, Moai. There's a lot of those that I tend to think that oh wow, damn.
This is Elephantine Island. Well, sorry to interrupt you, but
you're fine. You're fine.
We'll go back, and these are the granite boxes I'm talking about. Like,
yeah,
that are just
strewn about.
Two of them, right? That matches the one at that in it. Where is it now?
I think it's the Isis temple. I'll show you.
In Karnak?
No, I don't think
No.
so. There's some other ones there that are just like but the flatness and some of the angles are pretty amazing. This looks like it's got 16-sided, almost like 16-sided machining. Like, it's just little things like that would be very hard to make that accurate. And you're wondering why would you make it that accurate?
That's
going to flip through to the beginning, because this is where they are located physically in the temples. Like, this is very similar, right? There's these things that the temples are built around, and yet there's a whole bunch of them strewn on this island. And
weird.
They just say they're hand carved. Like, oh, this what, copper chisels and hand carved? I mean,
well, of course, yeah, that's always the explanation. And I've said it before that it's humans, hominids even, we use stone as the premier tool for like millions of years. I mean, it was like a long ass time. So if you think about it like that, and if you try to draw a parallel with just imagining how much better horsemanship was, top tier horsemanship was 200 years ago than it is today, you know that there's a lot of skills that were lost, right? Now, and you think about when metallurgy became a thing, and that first generation, how many little subtle things of literally millions of years of passing this trick down, passing this trick down, passing this trick down, and it all got lost in a generation or two, pretty much. When H culture starts doing metallurgy, and all of that just becomes obsolete. Just like I suck at riding the horse, right? I'm no good at it. I get on, the thing just starts eating. I'm like, do I really have to kick this thing? God damn. But that's the way of the world, really. So I think that I honestly think that a lot of the things, if we were to watch those guys go to town on a stone, I think a lot of it would be like, I don't know how much you guys know about baseball, but you don't put a lefty on third, you put him on first, right? And you do that for a reason, and you don't know that reason if you don't play baseball or don't pay any attention to it. And if you do, you're like, well, but if you're ignorant about it and you sit down and somebody explains to you, you do that because they're quicker to throw here and they're quicker to catch there. You're like, oh, well, duh, no shit. I think that's exactly how we'd look at it. We'd just be like, why didn't I think of that? Well, you didn't have the benefit of millions of years of father to son passing this down experience.
Yeah, that's a good point. So what were you going to say before I interrupted you about Easter Island and the small pyramids, I think?
Those different styles of when you see the rocks that are, it does tie into this actually. When you see those rocks that you're wondering how they did it, when it looks like you're showing the Menkaure's pyramid where they're smoothing it out, and it doesn't really look like they're just chiseling the pieces away. It almost looks like it's like being scooped away or sanded away slowly, right? Which wouldn't make a lot of sense. That there is a mystery there. Now, like this goes back to where we've pretty much started the conversation with them letting kind of leaving these open doors for conspiracy. It's by neglecting to address that mystery, by neglecting to say, yeah, that's pretty fucking weird, guys, we don't know how this happened, by just saying, hand carved, walk away. It's like, dude, you can do that, but then this happens. All right. You get fucking ancient aliens, and then you're going to cry about it and call us all racist. Well, I got an idea. Why don't you do your fucking job? Go out there, be skeptical and not cynical, and figure this out. To me, Sacsayhu Aman is probably the one that because the tech level of these guys is supposed to be so poor. And you look at how much effort would have gone into just getting the stones there, let alone the making them all perfectly flat and angled and stacked and all. Absurd amount of work. And they just this one ruler, he decided to have it built over thousands of years. Come on, what are you talking about? So they neglect the mystery, and then the rest of us are stuck out here, and where the rest of us are stuck out here trying to solve it without their assistance. And let's be fair, these guys know a lot. I mean, these guys, like, there's the one archaeologist you see on Ancient Aliens. You saw him at the end of Ancient Apocalypse season 2. I can't think of his name right now. It's driving me nuts. But but he's the guy who's one of the few people that can read the Mayan script off the top of his head, right? He don't need a book to translate. He just look at it and read it. And he's one of the few guys that you will see that has archaeology credentials that will be talk to Graham Hancock and even he'll say, I don't believe the same stuff, but he'll entertain the possibilities and have the discussions. And I honestly, if we had more of that, I think that the conspiracy side would not dwindle and die, but I think that it would take a lot of the air out of its sails. It's just, if you got guys actually out there working on it and they give you solid, reasonable, realistic answers and tell you they don't know when they don't know, that's credibility right there.
Well, and that makes me wonder why it's not happening, right? Because they really don't. They really don't. I don't think they have anything to stand on. I think these things are going to blow their narratives out of the water. I mean, even the stonework that you just talked about, and the stonework that's in Egypt and it's all over the world. They called it Cyclopean, right? This was from the 18. They knew this in the 1800s. This isn't a new. I always thought it was like a newer mystery. But they were talking about an ancient global civilization with the Cyclopean stonework in the 1800s.
Yeah, the guy that discovered the chalk mule statue, that statue that's reclining with the little plate for the heart down in South America, he looked at the headdress on that thing and said, that looks a damn lot like a pharaoh's headdress. And that was the start, really, as far as recorded history goes of in the modern times. And that was like 1860, somewhere in there. And there was two guys that were really influential before Ignatius Donnelly, and that was Charles Etienne Brazier de Bourbourg and Augustus Le Plagnon. And they were both archaeologists or anthropologists. One, his wife was a photographer, and he was into linguistics, and the other one was more into the architecture side of it. But they both came to the same conclusion that the Maya were the first. They believe that the Maya were the Atlanteans or the survivors of the Atlantis civilization. And that was picked up by Ignatius Donnelly and a few of his contemporaries. And it became then by the 30s with the Edgar Cayce and the whole spiritual movement of the 20s and 30s, the psychic stuff. It became very ingrained into the culture. And then after World War II, Atlantis was a thing.
And then it wasn't because they purposefully sort of strawmanned it away. I mean, it really, when I read Randall's work or watch his video, I haven't really. I've read his stuff on this. Like, it was just like that an instance where that one, they kind of made a shift in the narrative based on sort of bullshit reasons, and that was it. Like, Atlantis became what it is now today, this fairy tale kind of non-scientific bullshit, even though there's a bunch of papers that were written that talk about the geology down there. Like, I don't know if do you know about some of that stuff that Randall's talked about when it comes to Atlantis, like the geology, where it says like there was sand.
Yeah,
this,
a little
like
bit
beach type sand down below, and there was a bunch of like an anomalous kind of geological stuff that would fit with the narrative of some kind of sinking 12,000, 13,000 years ago.
Yeah, I've watched a good chunk of Randall's stuff. I haven't watched all of it, but yeah, I have heard him talk some about the geology side of it, and it is really interesting. To me, what is the most, like we say, they changed the narrative, right? And it's became Atlantis as an allegory. Plato was just trying to convince his contemporaries of this, that, or the other thing, so it's an allegory. And to me, that's such a that's an argument from an armchair. That's an argument from an armchair from somebody who needs to touch grass, as the kids would say nowadays. It's like, dude, if I'm trying to convince you guys that today, my argument is the West is falling, and I'm going to compare it with some other civilization.
It wouldn't take much to convince us that.
Well, fair point, but I wouldn't pick the world of Hyrule that Link lives in The Legend of Zelda. I would pick Rome because this is a real fucking place, and I'm trying to convince you of a real fucking thing. So if Plato's out there trying to convince his contemporaries of some ideological position, he wouldn't be quoting a city that they didn't believe in as his. So that doesn't prove Atlantis is real, but it proves it in my mind that Plato and his contemporaries definitely thought it was, if he's using it as an argument Yeah, he's going to add a bunch of crap to it, in my opinion, of course, because every culture is going to view it through their lens. So, of course, in his mind, Atlantis was a democratic society. And of course, they use the same metal on their temple walls that they value heavily. And well, why wouldn't they? But every culture is going to do that, right? But I think that there is a kernel of truth to that. And I do think that anyway, that whole argument it's a joke. Those are these kind of red herrings just meant to just like the racism thing. It's just to make people stop thinking. Quit. There's nothing to see here. Go away. It's like, come on. That's so lazy. That's so lazy.
What would you do if you could? Where would you put your energy and time and money if you didn't have to worry about time and money into these mysteries? Like, where would you go? Like, what's either what you're interested in or what you think would have the most bang for your buck in investigation?
Well, the dice rolls are as always a part of this, but that having done some research on that sunken city off of the coast of Cuba, that one, I mean, that's send a couple of rich boys with the PlayStation controller. I don't care, but and their own little submersible. But let me see what we got down there. But I think that would be a really good place to start because it's
so close too.
It's so close.
Have they done LiDAR on that at all?
I don't know. That's what sucks about that site. It's like it's just kind of dropped off the map as far as anybody talking about it since like 2006, except for us. It's like over in the little corner of the internet. We're all yay, but I just covered that in my last video, and I was blown away by, in particular, the woman that discovered the place. Right? She thought when they first discovered it, they were under contract with the Cuban government under Castro, and she discovers it, and she doesn't say anything for months because she thought they'd found a secret underwater military installation. And so she's like, ooh. And then she saw a calendar with Mexican pyramids on it, and she was like, oh. And then she opened her mouth and said, look what I found. Now, I can't say for certain that she was like in fear for her life or whatever, but it certainly seems like she was a little bit worried for some reason. And she does say that, she didn't say anything because of it being, she thought it was a secret base. So, and she was good at her job. This isn't the only time she recognized something just like by seeing a sonar image and saying she did that with the USS Maine. She called it out, and she wasn't even looking for the Maine. She just pointed at it and said, "That's the USS Maine."
Huh? Where is it? About approximately?
That's off the west coast of Cuba.
So over here between.
Yeah, down right. I'm like trying to touch the screen. Yeah, there you go. Right about where you're at.
Yeah,
right about where you're at.
Right, because it's right near the. I mean, so is it on this shelf? Do you think? Or
I'm pretty sure it's like right there in that kind of. I want to say off of that bald patch right there, that little white spot to the right, that tiny one right off the island. I think that it's, up closer to the island itself,
right on the island, that bay kind of.
Yeah, kind of right there off of that bay. I believe that it's out there off of that bay, but
that's interesting.
There's a name of the thing, but it's like the name is so I won't even try to butcher.
Yeah.
Is this basically what we're talking about? Is it this picture over here?
Yeah, but now see that image right there is based on the LiDAR images, but it's a reconstruction. Basically for pop science. It's made to look like Smoking Gun. But it's a reconstruction of what it could be.
Right.
The only images are like of close-ups of smooth blocks and things like that. And then there's there's one down there that's got both of them, like the one with the black and white image there on the bottom half. Yes. That bottom half that's the actual sonar image that part's based on. That doesn't look nearly as compelling, right? But there's the whole sonar image is on there. That's only part of it, and it looks like a city plan. It really does look like a laid out city. It's hard not to see it especially when you've seen like the layouts of sites like Tiwanaku and stuff.
And didn't she die too?
No, she's not dead. But she was.
Sorry about that. I thought.
No, you're fine. She was working in. She got arrested in Mexico for some unrelated stuff, but it was bullshit. Like she was arrested without a warrant, and
that's
because
what it was,
she pissed off a rich person, and so they had the police state kind of playing to their fiddle for a minute. And so she hasn't been back to Mexico since. And from what I understand, she hasn't really done any work in Latin America since. But she's an interesting individual. She fled the Soviet bloc in the 70s and, came to America and studied. She's an author. She's an interesting person. And not a pyramid idiot, so she doesn't think that this is Atlantis or anything. But she's also not, dyed in the wool, ideologically driven person in the archaeology community. So she says what most scientists would: we need more work. Looks interesting. We should go check it out some more. And then she doesn't get to.
And then I'm just looking because I'm still on this page. But what's going on with this other one here in Japan? Is this one in Japan?
Oh, Yonaguni, yeah, that one's awesome. Graham talks about that one quite a bit. That might even be Graham swimming right there. Wouldn't be surprised at all. He talks about this one quite a bit, and it's amazing. It's one of those sites that you can't say for certain that it is a sunken city. Things like that look very compelling. There's parts of it's the layout isn't nearly as neat and organized as the one in Cuba. We don't have these kinds of shots in Cuba. We have just the big LiDAR ones, the big sonar ones. But that one right there with the two next to each other with the black and white on the left, that one right there.
This one right here or this one?
That one right there. Yes. That shows, that's another pretty good one of the sonar image and how they used it to construct the pyramids next to it. But that one on the right is just bullshit. That was just made up.
Wow. But, the thing is, it's everywhere. I mean, that's the one that's everywhere. I mean, it really is kind of discouraging.
It's because like I was saying earlier, it's nice to make a narrative, right? So I even use that image as one of the images in my thumbnail because it is when people are looking for the Cuba and underwater city, that's what they're looking for. But
now this one here says Cuba, but this looks more like the Japanese one.
Yeah, that is Yonaguni. That's not
Yonaguni.
Cuba. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how it's pronounced.
So my thing on this has always been that we find so many sunken cities in the Mediterranean, and so there's just these sunken cities everywhere that it just seems to, whatever happened, whether it was an asteroid impact at the end of the Younger Dryas or whether shocks, or maybe you disagree with this stuff, but whatever made the water melt at the end of the ice age is, everyone seems to agree that it would have rose sea level by 400 feet. And when we look around now, we see that 80 to 90% of people are living within that 400-foot mark on the coast. Definitely enough that if the water came up, the rest of us would be back to the Stone Age.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Imagine if if you look at the United States, if you raise the water 400 feet, we lose almost all of our major landmarks, almost all of our major industry. I mean, there's a lot that would survive, but I mean, the entire Eastern Seaboard's gone. New York City, all that shit's gone. All the West Coast is gone. And so you end up with a situation where 10,000 years from now, about the only things you would still have left potentially would be like Mount Rushmore and maybe a couple of the dams. And beyond that, you probably wouldn't have a whole lot to tell you that we were here. There's plastics and stuff like that, but as far as big things go, it's clearly if they did use plastics back in those days, the ones they did were a lot more biodegradable than the ones we have apparently. But I don't think they did. Right? I'm again above the opinion that their tech level wasn't really way out there. I just think that it was better than they're given credit for by a large margin. But I think that's something, honestly, that I think that's one of the places where science is just kind of typically that paradigm. They'll try to hold on to that so hard that it'll at times will make them stupid. Like, you guys know the Heliopile, I believe it's pronounced. It's a Greek steam engine, ancient Greek steam engine. If you don't mind, pulling the picture. It's AELOPHILE, I believe. Sorry, it's worth seeing because it's before the time of Christ, and it's a rotating sphere with two jets on it, and they'd fill it with water and light a fire under it, and then the steam would drive it in a circle. And the mainstream narrative, the sources that tell us it exists and stuff, everybody believes that it was a toy. It was just something that, these guys, they messed around with and they had fun with. Yeah, there you go. It was just a toy, just a novelty. And I have a real hard time with that. These are people that had to spin stuff to make fire, spin stuff to grind their bread. They had to spin stuff to do everything, right? I think that thing spinning faster than anything they'd ever seen spin in their life in a perfect circle would have probably inspired some guys to start fucking with tools and trying to build stuff with it. And we know that they had pretty complicated gear sets because we have seen the Antikythera mechanism.
Yeah.
Exactly. So those are the two pieces you need. Okay. All they have to do is basically construct the flywheel and you are going, buddy. You're going. And so I'm of the opinion that this was used, and mainstream academia is of the opinion that it was a toy. I personally think that is when they talk about like disregarding the abilities of the ancients. I think that's a perfect example. You think they were that stupid that they didn't see the ability in that? Look at a millstone, dude. They drove oxen in a circle to make their bread. They knew. Right. But yeah, it's the Antikythera mechanism is a great one, man. That was so interesting.
Yeah, go back to that, Darren, just for a second.
All right, okay, give me a sec. I'll be a minute.
Oh,
because that was shown to be. It was found in the ocean, right, in a boat, I think.
Yep.
1,000, and it's definitely like from a boat that's really, really old, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was found with a bunch of statues and stuff. Like a diver, if I remember right, he said that he was saw naked bodies or something down there, and like there was dead naked people, and it turned out to not be dead naked people. It was statues.
What? Oh.
This is an accurate depiction.
Yeah, that's an accurate depiction of the internals. It's not.
Oh, that's a great little office gadget to have in the office.
They have them in wood too. There's these wood house ones you can buy that are probably $1,000 or so, I would imagine. But they're pretty slick looking. Like I think that's one of the top left actually.
This one.
I think so. I could be wrong. It's hard for me to. Yeah, that's one of the reproductions there. There's a guy on YouTube.
Navigation device, right? This is for navigating. Is that
not exactly? Kind of. It was. I forget the name. Like Astrolabe. No, not that's. I forget the name of it. Those things that you have in your science class in school that had the sun in the middle and all the planets. You'd crank a handle and you'd see the different planets go around at different speeds. It was that for the ancients. It had the different seasons on it. It had the different planets that they knew of, and it had a bunch of spirity stuff and symbolic stuff and whatnot mentioned along the way. This is a good time for this. This is a good time for that. It was basically a time. One of those kinds of things. You could rotate it a little bit each day and tell you where you were supposed to be, kind of thing.
Yeah, I heard that somebody said it was also tracking like rogue planets or impacts, meteors and stuff. Impacts like maybe the Taurid. I don't know if it was like the Taurids or not, but
I hadn't heard that. But that's interesting. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
There's a guy on YouTube that he's got like probably 100 hours of him reproducing an Antikythera mechanism, and he makes every single thing by hand, the wire, the gears, everything. He's sanding them down with files, everything he's using old school tools with and stuff. And it's a pretty, I mean, it's god awful boring after a little bit, but it's worth watching some if you're into that stuff, because he definitely, I mean, he makes it happen. He makes it happen piece by piece, and it is interesting. But it's also extremely painstaking. You get the idea of how expensive one of these things would have been. That's.
You're muted, Graham.
You're muted.
And how many iterations they would have had to go through to get it right? I mean, you can't just how would you just come up with this idea and then all of a sudden just make it the one time, right? I mean, it would have to be. You'd think it would be tweaked over hundreds of years or something.
You would. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wish I haven't looked into this for a while. I need to look it up because I just saw it on the History Channel like 20 years ago, back when the History Channel was more history than it is now. And there was they were talking about what did you call it? Sorry, I just got a stupid text message that a little disconcerting popped up on the screen, but no big deal. Distracted me though. Sorry. Yeah, where are we at? Sorry, that text derailed my brain hard.
That's okay. That's okay. I think you were talking about was it the Romans or something like that, or talking about the? Yeah, I can't. Remember.
Sorry.
It's okay. Where would you want to go just to kind of finish in time? If you wanted to go see something, if you wanted to figure something out, and time was not an issue, would you go back in time, forward in time? Would you? Go
I'd want to see. I'd want to see them doing Egypt for sure. I'd want to see that. I was talking about the History Channel. Sorry, there was there was a thing I saw on there where they talked about, I want to say Herodotus, and he was like making all of these weird gadgets for plays, and it like gear driven boxes that would be filled with sand, and it would have like silhouettes of like, here we're going to play the Odyssey, and it's like wooden silhouettes of the characters or wooden silhouettes of the boats in the water, and it's like 5-minute play that's just driven by this gigantic box full of gears and just filled with sand, and it slowly would pour out of it. When things like that, you get a guy that pulls something like that off once, and he's going to end up with a whole team of people underneath him because the king's going to throw cash at it. But again, that was on the History Channel, so I have to that's a grain of salt one nowadays. Sadly, the History Channel, ever since they quit being the Hitler Channel, they're not very reliable anymore. When all I talked about was military history back in the day, you could pretty much, if it's on the History Channel, it's probably accurate. But when they started to it's about the time Pawn Stars hit and freaking American Pickers, it's like, okay.
Yeah, it got weird for sure. Is that so? So what's your? I mean, you've been digging into this for a while. What's your sort of overarching view of this? Like, how close is Graham and these guys? What's like if you were forced to put sort of a timeline on things, what would it look like?
I'd figure about 12,000 years ago, something happened that knocked us back into the Ice Age. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis is a good candidate, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It doesn't even have to be that crazy. It could just be just something that was devastating enough, just the rising of sea levels in a short period of time, something devastating enough that it broke that culture's ability to continue to communicate with itself. So, like my favorite for this lost civilization is over in Easter Island, is over in Polynesia. There's a few reasons I think that, but that area, if it's flooded. If there was used to be pretty much a chain of islands that you could go from South America to Asia with, and you could island top. Matt Bell, we talked about this at length when I was on his podcast. He was the one that showed me those chain of islands, but I was already into the Easter Island thing. But that even drove it home further, because you could see these islands one to the next. You could see them from and know that you could just sail over there. So their entire culture would have been very, very connected. Yeah, you could see you could see right there. It's just a stream of when you lower the sea levels, you would have islands all over the place, all the way over from one side to the other. And so I think that before whatever happened that caused the sea levels to rise, I think we had a civilization that was capable of navigating pretty well. And I think that was where they were located. I honestly think that Easter Island was kind of the center of their culture. And a couple of reasons for that. One of them is it has the, you guys know what the World Naval Envelope stuff is, right? I assume.
No. Can we touch on that?
Yeah. A lot of cultures around the world have a world naval stone. It's the stone that they believe that the earth sprang from, that like the creative energy of the universe or whatever started at this rock. This is the first place that the umbilical cord from the universe started to grow the fetus that is the earth, right? And in Jerusalem, there's the rock there. The Omphalos stone at the Oracle of Delhi in Greece. Forget the place in India, but they have one in India. There's in South America. They're all over the world. Another type of thing that jumps the pond, this belief that this is the world naval, and that's actually the name for Easter Island in the native language, is navel of the world. And they have navel stones there. And what's weird about that is it is all these other places that you see it, it's in the center of their culture. It's a very important part for obvious reasons, right? I mean, it's the place that the world began. It's going to be in our capital. That's duh, but not on Easter Island. It's in this far flung little corner of the Polynesian world. So I believe that at one point it was their center of an empire, and then that it's just kind of everything fell to shit.
Well, if the sea was coming up, that'd be like where they were slowly retreating to, too. You know what I mean? Like islands are disappearing. I mean, the sea level didn't come up in an afternoon. You know, this probably happened over, you know, at least I was thinking years to decades to centuries, even. So you know, that's just where you end up, and you start making these statues for whatever reason. It's because, you know, to maybe try and stop the fucking water from coming up.
It will be
everything fall apart. You know, I mean, it's really got to be something else.
Yeah, and if you were on an island that was doing well, it's like all those islands start getting swallowed, and your island's doing okay. There's no reason to leave, man. There's no reason at this point. There's really no reason to leave, right? Things are going well, and you know shit's bad out there. Every now and again, your old buddy from another island comes and tries to beg some food or something. So these people would be staying put, and
eventually nobody's coming anymore. Right?
Exactly.
So building these statues to try and attract some people because, you know, you're for whatever reason, you know, eventually you got to get to the point where you're like, okay, man, the storm's over. Where the fuck is everybody?
Yeah. And I think that Easter Island, like the myth about Easter Island's discovery, the king like finds it, and then he sends a second expedition out of people to populate it. But the first expedition that finds the place is like a small expedition. They locate it, and then they go back and they send a bunch of people in to move into that land. And I'm of the opinion that they were looking for this is their old cap, this is their old Holy Land, this is their old Dome of the Rock, or however you want to put it. So when they found it, they settled there, and I think that's the earliest habitable layer that we find from like 1,200 years ago or whatever. I think that was them finally relocating what they'd been looking for quite possibly a very long time. And a lot of people will call that, you know, crazy or whatever, but to me that makes more sense than a lot of the other ideas about this. And at the end of the day, we don't have a good explanation for a lot of the things that we see on both sides of the ocean. If you see it in the old world and the new world, and it's before Columbus showed up or the Vikings showed up, even, I mean, in my opinion, the onus is on the people that say there was no connection to explain how that is. You know, it's one thing to say a nail on both sides of the pond. It's another thing to see similar iconography that is not functional. It's just aesthetic. That all of a sudden, or similar legends, that carries a lot of weight. Yeah. So I think to summarize, I think that that lost civilization, I think that it might not even have been the only one. Like you hear him talk about Atlantis, Lemuria, and Mu, and all this stuff, and it is quite possible that there were other contemporary civilizations that were similar, but I almost guarantee they would have been island faring back in those days. They will almost guarantee, because just like we were saying earlier, that's where everybody lives. This is where all the food is. It's very easy to survive on an island.
Even more so than, say, a coastline in the Americas or something like that.
As long as there's food there, yeah. I mean, a coastline in the Americas is a good place, but an island is the amount of fish and stuff like that you're going to have access to when you can hit the deep water with just a hop, skip, and a jump. There's a lot, you know, you're hard pressed to find an island on this planet, especially in that anywhere tropical, where the natives aren't living with a lot of leisure time. They make big feasts and do all kinds of goofy shit because they have all kinds of time, because they don't need to work their ass off to survive.
That does seem to be. It seems like the farther you get from the equator, the more, which seems to be one of those things that sort of pushed us into developing this society. You know, is like trying to preparing for winter or cold or whatever seems to be the main sort of driver of technology.
Yeah.
Or keeping it cold because you have to store it over a certain time or something like that. Like when the fruit's falling off the trees, man, what's the point? I mean, fucking and fishing sounds all right to me.
Exactly. It beats the hell out of farming, right? But yeah, it's funny to think about the amount of leisure time that these guys did have, and how that's what you need for the ability to start like learning astronomy and learning more complicated, weird things, right? You need such a surplus of time that they don't have to do something productive at all. It's just art for the sake of art. It's culture for the sake of culture. And when you see that in multiple places, buddy, that's a different. It's hard to explain why two different people have the same iconography, thousands of miles and thousands of years separated.
How does that sort of like metaphorically sort of align with the building of the cathedrals 1,000 years ago? Because it seems like that was this weird sort of time in history, 1,000 years ago, the late 900s, early thousands, when they started building these cathedrals, and then, they just sort of stopped. We have this sort of fixing, and maybe you disagree on that, but I've only been to a couple of them, but I go into these places and it's like, man, they tell me I'm from the modern world over in the new world over in Canada, but I look at this place and like every part of it is made by someone who was a master at whatever they were doing, no matter how small it is. And you're walking around a place that's enormous, and you're like, the amount of people that did nothing but work on this and we're seemingly happy to do it. It sort of falls in that same line as the pyramids, where it's like, yeah, you could get some slaves into some shit, but they just tend not to really make stuff this nice. If you're on the end of a whip, you're not carving these statues that are in some of these cathedrals and stuff like that. And that seemed to end too. You know what I mean? Like somewhere around 1100, or I don't know the exact date, but it just sort of that went away, and we went to this shitty shit we're doing now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It seems like there was like this was very related to I don't know a lot about the church history, but I know enough that was a time where there was the beginnings of kind of the erosion of the Catholic Church's hold on different parts of Europe, and so that probably would play into some of these things. It projects a lot of power to build something that requires. I mean, if you look at one of those, you think that it's coming, the power is coming from Rome to build it. You can visualize hundreds or thousands even of artisans and builders and stuff showing up, master craftsmen showing up to this town that don't even speak the language and are building this place. It's a projection of power. So I think that probably has something to do with it. One of the reasons that one of the things that I look for on those that is interesting to me is because they do put so much effort into it, but they're not even close to as accurate to True North or any of that as the Great Pyramid is. And they're made with smaller materials, way more modern time, way more documentation and all of that, and over hundreds of years, and not as accurate as what the Egyptians did thousands and thousands of years ago. That's impressive.
Well, there seems to be a clear devolution too. I mean, what do you think about that idea that there seems to be, like, if you could go back to the ancient Egyptians, whatever that was, to the modern Egyptians, the sort of the stuff that the Greeks were up to, and then sort of finalizing with the Romans, like, because the Romans were still doing some stuff that it seemed like the Greeks were a little better than them yet, and then the more recent Egyptians were even better than them, and then you go find the shit under the sand in Egypt, and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah, I think some of that is. We have to remember that technology progress doesn't necessarily mean better. Like in the early days of firearms, for example, firearms were considerably worse than a bow and arrow by a country mile. They were less accurate. They had less penetrating power. The only thing that was better was that I could just grab your ass off of a park bench and hand it to you and say, point it over there and pull the trigger. You had to spend years training with that bow. So, when you think about it like that, or if you look at the Transformers that I grew up with compared to the Transformers that my kid buys when I take him to the toy store that have plastic screws and, they'd fall apart in three times, where with the ones that I still have one on my shelf, right? It's quite possible that there's economic motivations for them to just be like, that was a lot of fun, boys. We're not doing that again. And you see a lot of that in the modern day, even with big projects. I mean, we build some pretty impressive stuff now, but you compare it to some of the stuff that we built 150 years ago. And I mean, there's buildings here in Spokane even that I think we'll be looking at those long after the skyscrapers here are gone.
Yeah. we go back and forth here on the time of how it's like I don't think that our generation would even be up to building things like the power grid or any of that stuff that we were able to take on 100 years ago is sort of lost to us. Even that ability. So if I can look at it that way as being like, because I can just look over the course of my lifetime in construction and it's sort of fallen off, and I always assumed that it was sort of this cascading thing that was going up, but I can see little parts of it heading in the other direction. I can see a microcosm of it just in my career. I can see a bigger macrocosm of it just in, like I say, I don't think we could build a bunch of the stuff that are for, like I even look at the Hoover Dam. It's like, I don't think we'd be up to that today. I really don't. Maybe we are. Maybe there's some people that are doing stuff like that, but it really doesn't seem like it. It doesn't seem like we're up to those sorts of projects.
Well, maybe not in the West or North America, maybe in Dubai or the UAE, they're doing stuff like that. But but I mean, Randall would say, going back to the cathedrals, I think there is a part of this that's sort of esoteric too, is that he thinks the Templars came back with some ideas or plans from the Middle East or Egypt.
I wouldn't argue with that, to be honest with you.
And the weather coincided. I mean, the weather that changed globally after the what was it, the medieval cold, what was the one before that, like kind of the Dark Ages? I mean, because he equated that to similar stuff happening in South America and in North America at the time. The where did we go, Darren, with Randall, the first trip there?
Mesa Verde, all that stuff. Like there seems to be like a global resurgence around the 1100s, maybe due to weather as well. So
yeah, did any of you guys ever read The Sign and the Seal, or the basic premise of it?
I don't think I did.
It's Graham's first kind of alternate history book, I guess you'd say. It's about the Ark of the Covenant potentially being in Ethiopia, right? And one of the first smoking guns is a temple that was built, one of these big cathedrals that was built by Templars in France, and it's got a bunch of statues in this one little room. There's like a bunch of statues on the floor of all these different characters. And one of them is Menelik. It's the son of the Queen of Sheba and Solomon, his bastard son. And he's got a cart, and he's hauling the cart. And that was the kind of the beginning of he's hauling it towards his mom. And that was kind of the first breadcrumb of the Knights Templar. It's a pretty interesting book, but anyway, it was like if you follow that book and if you assume that it's all right, the Knights Templar knew that the Ark of the Covenant was in Ethiopia when they came back from the Crusades, and it's an interesting perspective. And there is a lot of stuff, honestly, when you look at like one of my favorite things that Randall's ever brought up, and I guess I have different tastes than a lot of people, but this one's super interesting to me, is he showed this tapestry with a bunch of iconography from Freemasons. And like one of it's like a picture of a globe with two swords pointed at it. Another one's a picture of a comet in the sky. Another one's a picture of Noah's Ark. Another one's a picture of the woman standing at a busted pillar. It's one of the craziest pictures if you think about it in the concept of a context of a lost civilization. She's standing in front of a broken Greek pillar. The pillar's busted. On the pillar, she's reading a book. It's sitting on the pedestal of the busted ass pillar. Standing behind her, holding her hair and counting it, is Father Time with his sickle right there. It's his scythe. Like, if you look at it in that perspective, it's like the old civilization learning again. TikTok, very interesting shit. And that stuff it sounds very knowing that kind of stuff before we knew. Yes, there's the image. That there's other ones on that image, but that's so cool. That's so yeah. Anyway, when Randall brings up that kind of shit, man, that's when I'm just like, oh, that's interesting, because these guys might have.
What's in her hand? Is that an olive branch or what? What's
I forget. It's a Freemason symbol of I forget what it is. Some sort of I want to say knowledge, but I could be wrong. But I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Not acacia. No, it wouldn't be acacia, would it? I hope.
Maybe. I forget. But yeah, there's a whole. It was on one of his appearances on Joe Rogan that he had, but just like a whole tapestry. It's got a bunch of those symbols on it, and that was what made it to me where it was like putting them all together with the comets and all this other stuff. Yeah, that's wow.
So
Yeah,
you get into the beehive, man, and I've seen Randall's presentation about the beehive and how, you know, it could represent the moon, and how there's like evidence that there's all these lineups between all these correlations between the Noah's Ark and the old Horus story of the thing, and Noah enters the ark on whatever day, and Osiris enters the moon or whatever day. But anyway, basically, the long and short of it would be that the humans were escaping cataclysm on Earth using a device made that seems like the moon. I mean, that was my takeaway. I don't know if that's what Randall thinks. He doesn't really say what he thinks. He just sort of leaves it up to you.
yeah. No, that is interesting. I mean, that stuff. Okay, the skeptical side of my brain says, you know, when we start talking about people fleeing one planet to go to like hide, the skeptical part of my brain does say, okay, this is getting out there a little bit. But the reality of it is, I mean, you know, panspermia is something that's if you guys aren't aware, that's the idea that, well, okay, one planet's life was seeded from another. This is something scientists are, you know, they entertain this idea. It's not something that they disregard. We do know that there are things on this planet that can survive deep space and then still live to procreate. And evolution would say that's a weird thing. There's not a real strong reason for you to have that capability all that way. I mean, it makes sense to survive a lot of stuff, but all the way. So there, but again, the skeptical side of my brain is just like, yeah. More evidence. That's if we were to go to Mars and find anything that was once alive, we could pop just a tiny bit of DNA. If we just need 5% of that, and we would at least be able to tell if it was related to us or not.
Yeah,
that would be real quick.
Cody says, yeah, it's acacia, and she's holding the acacia, which is interesting because they're making DMT out of that apparently. So I don't know.
There you go.
You're reading the book on the broken pillar and handing somebody some DMT. I don't
know. Yeah, those aprons are pretty wild. I mean, and just all the stuff with the moon and the sun is wild in its own right. You know how there's so many anomalies with the moon that it's crazy. Like, I mean, I've gone through a bunch of it, and it's like a bunch of these people that were like high level scientists were like, man, if I had to pick, the best theory is that the moon is not there. You know, like all the amount of things that have to line up for this to be the size and the this and the that, and the rotation versus the size relation to the Earth, and then you can get into those solar system numbers. Have you seen Randall's stuff on that about the 108 times and stuff like that? What's your thought on all that sort of stuff? Is that fairly accurate?
Well, it's interesting. It's hard to again. I get skeptical about that stuff, but I mean, when Matt Bell told me that it was the one that really got me was the ring. And that was the one that got me to like take a little bit of a look. And I haven't dove as deep into the rabbit hole as I need to hang my hat on it. But like he talks about the ringing of the moon when it's struck by something, and that's an interesting tidbit there. But you know, a lot of the stuff, like how do you put it? I'm trying to think of the name of the idea, but anyway, it's basically, you know, yeah, it's anomalous, but they're kind of sure that we would need the moon for the things to go down the way they do here, right? We need it for the tides, and we need it for life to exist on Earth the way that it does. And you know, if you say that, you know, well, we're lucky, and that's, you know, why is it here? And well, if you're going to have a conversation on a planet, it's going to have to be one that's, you know, conducive to life. So even if the odds are astronomical against the things that make this planet conducive to life, the only planets that conversations are going to be happening on are the ones with those astronomical odds already completed. Otherwise, you're not going to have intelligent life to have the conversation. So yeah, if you follow what I'm saying there, it's like you can't. It becomes difficult for me to say for sure because we have exactly one case study and it's got a bunch of people running around on it. So,
What do you think?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's interesting to me, and as it's one of those things that I don't think that they'll send. I highly doubt anytime soon, unless Elon Musk changes gears from Mars. I don't think they're going to send anybody to go digging down to find out if the moon is a space station or anything like that. Not anytime in the near future. So it's one of those things we're just going to have to not know. Or
we're going to have to keep taking high res videos from your backyard and of all the UFOs coming in and out of it, which is, I mean, man, there's people doing all kinds of amateur astronomy and they're finding lots of crazy stuff, but it'll just never really, I mean, maybe it'll change things eventually, but I feel like it just will never be acknowledged.
Oh, with this day and age now, it's so, I mean, the AI created videos is so just so simple that it's sad. And you know, it's easy to see a lot of the tells, but if people make a bunch of 5-second clips and they just edit together the little 2 seconds that look really good, man, you can, and just that knowledge is all that it takes for a lot of the skeptics to just chirp.
Well, I mean, dude, even in the 90s, like when I was into UFOs in the 90s, they would always say this was one of the main things. Like, you can't prove a picture or a video back then was real. You could only prove it's fake. So you can only go so far. You can't prove it's real.
Yep.
You just can say that's fake or it's not fake, but that doesn't mean it's real because you haven't yet proved it's fake. So it's just a never ending cycle.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because they'll always talk about the God of the gaps. They always act like that's this horrible thing. Oh, Atlantis is relegated to the God of the gaps position. It's only the gaps in our knowledge. And it's like, well, flip that on its ear. And it's basically the exact opposite. It's like, if there's a gap, they want to deny it. 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 That we know. And that's, you know, it's, I said earlier about it's like saying God did it. That's something atheists have said for a long time. It's like, you might be a great scientist, but the moment you say God did it, you're worthless to me in the lab. And that's fair. But that goes both ways. The moment that you say there's no gap, well, fuck you. You're not doing science now. You're worthless in the lab, buddy. We got a mystery here and you're saying I already know, and you don't. And that's the amount of times historically that happens in certain fields are worse than others. I think archaeology is the amount of leeway that a person has to inject their personal opinion, and they're drawing a little story of the past. It's a narrative that they forged. That a lot, you know. Now you're telling me my story sucks, dude. It's not just saying that I got this data wrong or that I interpreted. Now I told a shitty story. It personal. It takes it, and going back to guys like Flint and his reaction to being picked on and shit, you can see that it's like, man, some of these guys, they get challenged, they're going to get fucking mad.
What do you think is? Do you think we're going to get any closer here? I mean, things are somewhat changing up. I mean, regardless of who you trust and who you don't. I mean, we're at the era where Dan can get on the biggest show in the world. If it's not the biggest, it's one of them. You've firsthand seen how quickly things can change once you go on that show. But you know that sort of option wasn't out there even 5, 6, 7 years ago. Do you think there's, what do you have any predictions for the next 10 or 15 years? Do you think anything, is there any sort of thing that you think might break the camel's back?
As far as like us learning more about the past and stuff that
either us learning more about the past would be one, or the other would be just the sort of pop culture or the zeitgeist changing enough that we start looking at it seriously again, because it should be the most important thing. Like, you'd think that would be the number one thing, and I think that most people would agree with that. If they didn't think that it was all settled science already.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Most people are far more interested in finding out where we came from than stratigraphy or than seed shattering or any of that bullshit, right? It's a story. I think we're in an interesting time there, because the zeitgeist definitely is shifting. People are, again, the amount of damage that the whole COVID thing did to the scientific world, the credibility of science is heavy, and it's got a lot of these guys kind of under a microscope that they didn't used to be under. They're not used to, and that's not just in the medical community. As a matter of fact, the medical community is almost at war with itself still over this craziness. But the people on the outside of that, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see some funding going to do some of these things, like investigating that underwater city off of Cuba. But these are really expensive projects. I mean, very, very expensive. I mean, you're talking billions of dollars for them to like send the submersibles down there and take pictures and all that shit. It's not, you're not talking a few million. You're talking like $1 billion or more. So you've only got a very small group of people in the community that could even think about financing it. So it's kind of a push and pull there, but I do think that it is a possibility with some crowdsourcing and stuff. I do think that we will maybe see more done. There's a problem here. From a financial perspective, you got to look at it. In my mind, it's both ways there. Like you guys are aware of the hidden chamber in the Great Pyramid they found with the muons, I'm sure, right? Where there's okay. So it's years and they haven't opened it up yet. Well, if you think about it, and you're in charge of Egypt, if you open that up and there's a tomb in there, and now you found the tomb of Khafre, you've mystery solved, and you drastically, potentially reduce your New Age tourism, your Pyramidian Atlantis bro tourism. On the flip side of it, if you open that thing up and there is no chamber there, you basically punctured a mystery for nothing. And you, again, risk losing some of these dollars. So from and even like an author, if, I know Graham Hancock isn't, he's not underhanded, and he would certainly love to see any of these things solved, right? But you write 20 books about these things, and you can only talk about Giza so much. You've got to go to other places. And if you write a book about the underwater city of Cuba and you investigate it and spend $1 billion as the book, and the end of the book is Al Capone's vault, that sucks, right? I mean, that's harsh. That is brutal. So I think the incentive is basically the incentive is going to have to come from the public, I really think, or from somebody who's so fucking rich you just don't care. Or
how about this? We change USAID to U.S. Ancient Industry Development.
There we go. That would work. It's funny. I watched Flint just spaz out a couple of months ago on Twitter about them closing down his department, and it's not the only one. They're closing down a number of anthropological and archaeological departments around the Western world right now, and it's hilarious to me because. Like I was saying earlier, they're the ones in the best suited for this work. They are the ones. Underwater archaeologists should be the people we send to Cuba, not some rich dudes in a fucking submersible, right? But those guys don't seem to want to go. It's probably, like, honestly, it's probably the kind of career killer now, isn't it? I mean, if you go out there and you're like, hey, I want to go check out the place all the Atlantis bros are talking about, they're like, fucking go curate a museum, dickhead. You're out of the field. Just like that, right? You're benched. And that's exactly what happened to Jacques St. Mars, the guy that first started the guy who first challenged Clovis first. He was a field working archaeologist that spent his summers hiking around in Canada, finding places like those Bluefish Caves and shit. And when he started hanging his hat on that, they're like, yeah, get your ass in the museum. Oh, it's a great job. You're being taken well care. You're being put at a fucking desk is what's happening. Get out of the field. We don't want you.
Same with that chick that found fires in Mexico, right?
The same with the chick with what?
That found the ancient fires down in southern USA or Mexico. She was first dating them back, I think, to 50,000 years or.
Oh wow, no, I didn't know that.
Patricia something or other, and she got. I think she got run right out of the profession.
I would not be surprised at all.
When you find deep caves in Canada, they just shut them down. I don't know if you heard about that, but
no, really,
found a huge cave system up in, I think it was northern BC somewhere or something. And they won't allow anybody in there. So too dangerous. You need handrails everywhere in Canada. So
oh god, that's true. Yeah, they tell us there's places we can't go here, but like there was like I grew up in southern Illinois, and there's all these caves on the bluffs right near the Mississippi River, and they're all got fences around them and did no trespassing signs, and they're all full of used condoms and cigarette butts and fucking beer bottles and spray painted, and we all partied there when that's duh. But yeah, we have underground cities here, underground. There's like a big underground network of tunnels here in Spokane, in downtown Spokane. They used to have a steam plant here, and the streets were, here's another old technology that's gone. The streets were all warmed in the winter, and so there was never any ice on the streets here in Spokane 100 years ago. But it ain't like that no more. But those tunnels are like that. They're cordoned off to the public, but you'll find people down there every now and again.
So I think it was Huatlaco.
Okay.
But I can't. I'm trying to find her name. But I remember reading about this years ago because she had come out, said these were fire pits and they were at least 20,000 years old, and they all came out and said she was nuts, and she lost her job. And the article I was reading was, of course, them.
Yeah,
saying
she's nuts.
Which is funny because that goes back to our genesis, right? Our first ever guy we had on the show was Ephraim Palermo. He had spent the late 90s downloading the Voyager Mars pictures. And he's like, dude, it would take a whole fucking hour to download one picture. And I'd download them and go make dinner, and I'd come and look. And he found all these stains. And he's like, that's water. The only thing that could make a stain like that down the thing would be water, and they debunked it all this ways. And we had him on the show. It was still, it would have been considered fringe, but I think around 3 or 4 years in that NASA came out and said that was the case, and he was right. They even ended, I think, they had someone on CNN that mentioned him by name and said that he had been right all these years ago. What do you think about NASA and this stuff? Can we trust anything they're saying?
I mean, I don't distrust NASA entirely, but there's certainly, ever since the end of World War II, information has been like the battleground, right? That's
weird. Yeah.
Yeah. It was way more important than it was before. And NASA's, been part of that since day one. Now, I don't believe that the moon landing's fake, and I don't believe that the Gemini mission footage and stuff like that. A lot of people think those spacewalks and all that shit. A lot of people think a lot of that stuff's fake. I'm not of that opinion. I do think that I know for a fact that they dyed images from Mars. They would use color filters and shit on all kinds of things to make things look like the way that they were supposed to. They do doctor their images that they put out for the public quite frequently, quite heavily, and they didn't come out and admit that was found out as software for editing photos became so robust that you could undo things. So just undo the orange filter, and you're like, oh, there you go. Look at that. The entire screen had an orange filter put on it. It's that easy now. But for the longest time, it wasn't that easy. And so I don't trust them implicitly. I don't think that they would. I think, honestly, if they did found a civilization or something on Mars, I think that NASA would probably be jumping all over it to get money. I think the funding that they would be able to pull out of it would be immense, and that they would probably play a PR game with it myself. But that is me assuming that there's nobody above them telling them, if you find aliens, you don't tell anyone. Because, I mean, clearly, again, as a government agency, they're beholden. There ain't a goddamn thing they can do about that. The man at the top tells them, you keep your trap shut or you report it this, and that's what's going to happen. So, yeah, yes and no. I'm sorry. As usual, my answers are boring.
Anything else? Is there anything you feel like we missed, or anything we should start to touch on before we start to wrap up?
No, I probably the biggest thing that I would want to mention is that this, to me, is, I didn't expect it when I started making videos, but the whole this mess is part of it's an extension of the culture war, sadly. And I'm not never been a big fan of the culture war myself. I've always found that as kind of well, there's two halves of the human psyche. If you're looking at it that way, there are the dreamers and the skeptics, and it takes both sides to advance us. And It's you take that with from the cultural perspective, you have your more conservative types that want to keep things the way they are, and you have the kinds that are more ideological and they want to advance society. It takes both. It takes both. Yeah, you guys are old enough to remember All in the Family, right? That show operated under the premise that Archie was wrong, the younger kids were right, but their ideas were always beholden on his life, his money, his paycheck, the war that he won. It's what humanity is. And so the culture war, where it spills into archaeology, is a great example of why it's a bad thing in general. We lose. I say this a lot, but it's the best quote to illustrate this is Einstein said, after a few years after the theory of relativity had became a thing, he's quoted with saying, "I can barely recognize the theory of relativity now that the mathematicians have gotten a hold of it." And that's basically, he was a scientist, but he dreamt up something that wasn't complete. It needed the fine-tooth minutia, the skeptics. It needed both halves of the human psyche to work together to split the fucking atom. So I personally find if there's anything that I try to get across with all this stuff, is it's like the culture war in and of itself. This is a great example of the fucking cancer that it is to humanity. We stagnate, we stop. We have the ability to move forward. We have people on both sides of the fence that want to see things move forward, but because everybody's afraid to step into the middle and shake hands and be seen as collaborating with those. We live in a democracy. If your position is give them an inch, they'll take a mile, instead of we need to find a way for us to somehow coexist, we're fucked. And that goes for archaeology, politics, medicine, any of it. That's just, if you can't compromise, the only other option is might, and that sucks. We know historically that sucks. So anyway,
and everything's it's a pop culture politics now, right? Everything is politicized. So
I ask people all the time, because I get all this. Everybody wants to tell you their and I pop that bubble real quick with. Even here in Spokane, the mayor was Nadine Woodward. Was a news anchor, and so I'll ask people if you know who the mayor is, and about half the time they'll say that news lady, or they won't even know. And it's like, well, if you don't know who the fucking mayor of your own town is, dude, I do give zero shits about your opinion on Washington D.C. or the world stage. You're cosplaying, dude. You're LARPing as a fucking political, as somebody who's into this shit. You don't know anything. You get your info from memes, don't you? It's like, but clearly that's the case for a lot of these people. They don't even fuck. A lot of these people, I see them just screaming about stuff, and it's like, you even. Did you read the paper that you're linking down below? Screaming this, because it has nothing to do with what you're saying. It's fucking insane. But somebody told them that it did. It just, and especially in a day and age when there's a rush to be first, right? So, why fact check when I can get ad revenue and post a retraction tomorrow?
That's right, Dan. This has been great. We appreciate you taking some time, finally getting you on the show. Hopefully, we might see you still. We might still see you in a couple months.
Yes, I'm hoping so. I'm trying to get all of that ironed out. I appreciate you guys understanding and work with me on my schedule. It's like I mentioned, I got custody of my kid, and it's I'm not about to just start disregarding him to do this. I can make both work. So thanks for working with me on this stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. No, anytime. Let us know if you don't make that one. We'll do another. I mean, we're down there all the time, so we're sort of down there at least once a year, sometimes twice, doing something with Randall. So awesome. If we can't connect on this one, we'll connect on another. We should do a shout out to Timmy Bush, who connected us.
Thanks,
Lord
Timmy
Bush, Lord Timmy around here, one of our big supporters. So big thanks to Tim for setting this up. And if you do end up making it to Egypt, let me know when you're going, because I might tag along on that one. I know all those guys over there, so I get the sense I can sort of hopefully weasel my way in on the same.
Yeah, I'm going to be in Sedona when Graham's there here during Easter. If you guys are going to be, I'm actually going to be speaking with him for an hour or two on stage, which I kind of blew my mind. But he just invited me to that a few days ago. So,
what are the dates on that? Because I was going to be out of town, but now I'm not. So,
like 18th, 19th, 20th, something like that. I maybe the 19th and the 20th, I think. I know it like lands during Easter. Randall's going to be there. A bunch of people. There's a bunch of people are going to be there. But that should be good. It's Graham's one appearance in the States this year as a public speaker. So I'm excited.
Great.
But yeah, thanks, Darren. Thanks, Graham. It was really good talking to you guys.
Yeah, where can we find your stuff?
Oh, my YouTube channel is Dedunking. That's Dedunking, 2 Ds like my ex. But I got that's basically where you find me everywhere. Dedunking the past is a lot of times will be the tag if debunking was already taken. But like on Twitter, I think it's Dedunking the past. But yeah, Dedunking on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram is where you'll find me mostly. I've got a TikTok account, but I never use it anymore.
No, TikTok is unusable. I don't know.
Well, it's that content that I make doesn't seem to. When I post a video on YouTube and it got 6 million views, and I post it on TikTok and it gets like 20,000, and I don't make any money on it, and I make like 1,000 on YouTube, it's like, well, you can't have my content for free, guys. Sorry.
No.
I want to tell you.
Exactly. Well, Dan, thanks for coming on the show. Come back anytime, and I will be in touch. We'll figure out if May works or not.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Darren. Nice talking with you. Nice talking with you, Graham. Thanks a lot, you guys.
Yeah.
Take care.
And that was our chat with Dan Richards, Dedunking.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, that was a fun one. That was a good one. We've been trying to set this up for a while. We hope you guys enjoyed it. Of course, shout out to Timmy, Lord Timmy. If you want to be a Lord like Timmy, head over to grimerica.ca/support today and sign up for a monthly or make a one-time donation. We don't get paid from anybody but you guys. So if you do get some value from our show, if you like it, whatever it adds value to, send some value back our way over at grimerica.ca/support today. Sign up for a monthly or make a one-time donation. We're trying to throw some extra content at you guys now because it's about our full-time job. So, we're trying to make everything work. So head over to grimerica.ca, check out all those episodes, sign up for a subscription at grimerica.ca/support. Check out grimericaoutlaw.ca if you want to check out our more political and off-the-wall stuff. And contact at thecabin.com for trips and events. And Adult Brain, that trip we were just talking about with Dan. I mean, you might want to come on the Bonneville tour. You might meet Dan. Who knows? Maybe you won't. Maybe you will. But if you buy a ticket, if you don't buy a ticket, you definitely won't. So that's going to be time. That's a week long in Utah. Well, we're only in Utah for like a day. We're in Utah. Then we're mostly in Idaho for the entire trip. So check that out. Contact at thecabin.com. And then we got all the audiobooks, adultbrain.ca, almost 150 audiobooks, some new ones available there. You can publish your book through us. We actually sold a paperback today. I got to ship out. So adultbrain.ca if you want to get books, ebooks, audiobooks, or publish your books. And GrabAmericaCBD.com for CBDs and tinctures and gummies and stuff like that. If so floats stores. Yeah, we got the Ignatius Donnelly book there on the website, so you can check that out. Other than that, we love you guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Your mind's on fire, all the color red in a blue lagoon. In a storm in Bermuda, you've dive bombed into a seashell swoon. Maybe your easiest dreams make sweet perfume. While you're yawning, yet not breathing in a hospital room. Should I call for help? We are drowning in this ocean swell. Let's start from scratch. Quit living these lies and become unattached. The idea of some far-off future is the fuel for your worries. But for God's sakes, time